The luminous rings of Rithia cast pale shadows across Elder Ton's worried face as he walked slowly toward the great meeting hall. The air smelled sweet, like the silver flowers that bloomed year-round in their world. This might be one of the last times he would smell them. The thought made his chest tighten with grief. The crystal towers of the capital city caught the light of their dying sun, breaking it into countless colors that danced across the polished stone pathways. For 8,000 years, the Rithians had built their civilization in harmony with their world. They had created art that moved viewers to tears, music that could heal the mind, and philosophy that brought peace to troubled souls. Yet none of these achievements would save them now. Elder Ton paused at the entrance to the council chamber. Inside waited the other 6 members of the Council of 7, the oldest and wisest leaders of Rithia. He straightened his silver robes and touched the wisdom stone at his neck for strength. "You seem troubled, Elder," said a soft voice behind him. Ton turned to see Counselor Yun, the youngest member of the 7. At just 200 years old, Yun had earned her place through her brilliant mind and kind heart rather than age alone. "How could I not be troubled?" Ton replied. "The fate of our entire world rests on today's decision." Yun nodded, her clear blue skin reflecting the light. "Then we should not keep the others waiting." Inside, the remaining 5 council members sat in a circle. Councillor Jin, keeper of history, nodded to them as they entered. Councillor Ba, master of sciences, studied data on a thin crystal screen. Councillor's son, Wan, and he sat in silence, their faces showing the same worry that Ton felt. "Let us begin," Ton said, taking his place at the head of the circle. The room darkened, and a glowing image of their star appeared above them. "The data from our observatories confirms what we feared. Our sun's core has become unstable. The changes are happening faster than we predicted." Councillor Ba stood up. "I have run the calculations 7 different ways," he said, his voice steady despite the terrible news he delivered. "Within 3 cycles, our world will be consumed by solar flares. Nothing on the surface will survive. And our underground shelters? Ask Counselor Sun. They would protect us from the initial flares, but the radiation would make the planet uninhabitable," Ba answered. "We would be merely extending our suffering." The silence that followed felt heavy. 8 billion Rithians faced extinction. Their 15,000 years of civilization would end. "There must be a solution," Counselor One said finally. "We have always found a way." Counselor Yun stepped into the center of the circle. "We have sent envoys to all major galactic powers," she said. "The Vortic Coalition possesses the technology to transport our entire population to suitable colony worlds. Their ships could evacuate everyone within 2 cycles." A small flicker of hope passed through the room. "And their response?" asked Ton, though he suspected the answer. Yun's shoulders dropped slightly. They calculated the cost-benefit ratio and declined. They said the resources required would set back their expansion plans by 50 years, and our people offer no technological or strategic advantage to justify such investment. "What of the Navan Alliance?" asked Counselor He. "They pride themselves on their ethical standards. They claim their policy of non-interference prevents them from altering the natural cosmic order," Yun replied bitterly. The others were equally pragmatic in their refusals. The council chamber fell silent again. The Rithians, for all their cultural and philosophical achievements, had little to offer the established powers. Their technology had always focused inward, on harmony and balance, rather than outward exploration or resource acquisition. They had no valuable minerals that couldn't be found elsewhere, no weapons that would interest military powers, no secrets worth trading for the lives of billions. "So we are to simply accept our fate?" Counselor Jin asked, his voice breaking. 8,000 years of history, art, knowledge, all to be lost. Ton closed his eyes. The weight of leadership had never felt so heavy. "We have always taught that all life follows natural cycles. Perhaps this is our end cycle." "No," Yun said firmly. "There is one final option." All eyes turned to her. "A transmission," she continued hesitantly. "Not targeted at the major powers, but broadcast to all worlds, regardless of development stage. a plea for mercy, for basic compassion. To the primitive worlds. Elderton's brow furrowed deeply. What could they possibly offer? Many haven't even achieved space travel. Some have, Yun replied. Not interstellar travel, perhaps, but they're close. And they may not be bound by the cold logic of the established powers. You speak of emotion, said Counselor Bod with a hint of dismissal. Primitive species are ruled by feelings, which make them unpredictable and dangerous. Yes, Yun agreed. Unpredictable enough to help strangers without calculating the profit. The council debated for hours. Some argued it would waste precious time. Others feared drawing attention from dangerous young species. But as their star burned ever more unstably in the sky above them, desperation won out. Very well, Tan finally decided. Prepare the message. Make it simple enough for developing translation systems to understand. For 3 days, the finest minds on Rithia crafted a message of desperate need. They included basic star charts, information about their world and people, and a simple plea: help us survive. And so the message was sent, a desperate cry echoing across the stars, traveling at light speed in all directions. Most civilizations that received it dismissed it immediately. Some never detected it at all. A few noted it as an interesting cultural artifact before returning to their own concerns. But on a blue planet at the edge of an unremarkable spiral arm, a young woman named Narisong sat bolt upright in her chair at the Deep Space Listening Project. Her eyes widened as the strange patterns resolved into meaning through the translation program she had been developing. Professor Kim, she called out, her voice shaking with excitement. You need to see this. The aging professor hurried over, adjusting his glasses as he leaned toward the screen. It's a distress call, Nari explained, her hands trembling. From another world. They're asking for help. Professor Kim stared at the message, then at the star map it contained. If this is real. It's real, Nari insisted. And according to these coordinates, they don't have much time. Within an hour, the message had been passed to government officials. Within a day, it reached the United Earth Space Agency. And within a week, humanity, a species that had only recently taken its first tentative steps into space, faced the greatest moral question in its history. Would they answer the call? 8 months in space had changed Captain Jia Park. Her once short black hair now touched her shoulders. Lines had formed around her eyes from the stress. But as she stood on the bridge of the ESV horizon, watching the blue-green planet grow larger on the main screen, her eyes shone with wonder. Final approach to Rithian orbit, announced Navigator Han, his fingers moving quickly across the control panel. The young man had lost weight during their journey, but his hands remained steady. Still can't believe we made it. Believe it, Jia replied, though her own amazement matched his. She touched the ship's wall gently, almost like thanking an old friend. The horizon wasn't pretty. Its hull showed patches where repairs had been made. Inside, cables hung from ceilings, and temporary fixes had become permanent features. But it had carried them 17 light years when no human had ever traveled more than to their own moon. Lieutenant Damie, their communications expert, had barely slept in 3 days. Since they entered the Rithian solar system, she had worked non-stop to improve their translation software. Now she approached with a tablet in hand, dark circles under her eyes. Captain, we're receiving transmission from the surface, she said. They're confused. Confused. About what? About why we came. Jia frowned. Didn't they send a distress call? Yes, but Damie hesitated. From what I can tell, they didn't expect anyone to answer, especially not us. The bridge fell silent as everyone processed this information. Earth had thrown everything into this mission. The horizon carried their best people, their most advanced technology, and the hopes of an entire planet. For months, they had faced death daily as the experimental drive pushed the limits of physics. 3 crew members hadn't survived the journey. Put them through, Jia ordered. The face that appeared on the screen wasn't human. The being had blue-tinted, almost translucent skin that seemed to glow from within. Its eyes were large, with no visible pupils, just swirling colors like an opal. Yet, despite the alien features, Jia could clearly read the expression: shock. Greetings, Jia said, keeping her voice steady. I am Captain Jia Park of the Earth ship Horizon. We received your distress call and have come to help. After a moment of silence, the being responded in a musical voice that the translation software converted to flat mechanical words. We did not expect. You are from the third planet in System CR 7293. Yes, we call our planet Earth. Your species has achieved interstellar travel. Jia glanced at her crew before answering. Just barely. The Horizon is our first and only vessel capable of such travel. The drive that brought us here was theoretical until we built it. Another long pause. You risked an experimental vessel on an uncertain journey for strangers. Dr. Bin, the ship's medical officer, whispered from behind Jia. They really can't understand why we came. We'll explain in person, Jia said to the screen. Request permission to send a landing party to your coordinates. 6 hours later, Jia stood with a small team on the surface of an alien world. The air smelled sweet, like nothing she had experienced before. Crystal towers rose in the distance, catching the light of the Rithian sun and breaking it into rainbows. Trees with silver leaves swayed in the gentle breeze. Their small shuttle had landed in a wide plaza where a group of Rithians waited. Up close, their crystal-like nature was even more apparent. Their bodies seemed partly solid, partly light. They moved with fluid grace that made the humans appear clumsy by comparison. One Rithian stepped forward. I am Elder Tan, leader of the Council of Seven. Welcome to Rithia. Jia bowed slightly. Thank you for receiving us. I am Captain Park, and these are key members of my crew. They were led through streets where curious Rithians watched from a distance. Many had come out to see the strange visitors, yet they maintained a respectful silence. Jia noticed how the buildings seemed to grow from the ground rather than being built upon it. Everything on Rithia appeared to exist in harmony. The council chamber was a dome of crystal that filtered the sunlight into soft, pleasant beams. 7 Rithians sat in a circle, with Elder Tan taking his place among them. The humans were offered seats facing the council. For 8,000 years, we have observed the stars, Tan began. We knew of other intelligent life, but contact was rare and brief. When our sun began to fail, we sent messages to the advanced worlds we knew existed. A younger Rithian that Jia would later learn was named Iam continued. None answered. They deemed us unworthy of the resources needed to save us. So we sent one final message, Tan said. A plea to any who might hear it. We did not expect an answer. Yet you came, Ian added, her opal eyes fixed on Jia. From a world we did not know had achieved space travel. You traveled 17 light years because of our message. Elder Tan asked again, still struggling to understand. Your civilization possesses interstellar capability, yet you risk your only vessel for strangers. Jia glanced at Diplomat Mun, who nodded encouragingly. Where we come from, you don't ignore a cry for help. It's that simple. But what do you gain from this arrangement? Gain? Jia looked genuinely confused by the question. We gain knowing we didn't let an entire species die when we could help. That's enough. The Rithians exchanged looks that even the translation software couldn't interpret. They spoke among themselves in tones too musical for the humans to follow. Perhaps, Tan finally said, we should explain our confusion. In our long history of observing other worlds, we noticed a pattern. As species advance technologically, they become more calculating. They measure all actions in terms of benefit versus cost. The more advanced the civilization, Yun added, the less likely they are to act on emotional impulses like compassion. So you're saying advanced civilizations aren't kind? Asked Dr. Bin. They are efficient, Tan corrected. They maximize their resources for their own benefit. It is logical. Logical, maybe, Jia said, but not human. This is why we are confused, Yun admitted. Your technology suggests you should behave according to the pattern. Yet you came with no promise of reward. Diplomat Mun leaned forward. Humans have a saying. The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats those who can offer nothing in return. A murmur passed through the council. One of the older Rithians spoke up. Your journey here must have been dangerous. We lost 3 crew members, Gia said quietly. The drive failed twice. We nearly ran out of supplies. Yet you continued, Tan observed. Why? Gia thought about Earth, about the global effort that had made their mission possible. Nations that had once been enemies worked together. Resources were diverted from comfort to necessity. Millions had watched as the Horizon launched, carrying humanity's best hope of saving an alien world. Because it was right, she answered simply. And because helping others is part of who we are. As the meeting continued, Jia noticed a change in the Rithians' posture. The confusion remained, but something else was growing. Hope. 3 days after landing on Rithia, the humans set up a working space in a large crystal building near the council tower. They called it the Operations Center, though it was really just a room filled with human computers and Rithian data screens. Maps of the planet hung on walls. Charts showing star activity covered tables. The air smelled of coffee that the humans had brought from Earth and the sweet tea the Rithians served. Lieutenant Han had not slept much. Dark circles showed under his eyes as he stood before a large screen. Captain Jia, Elder Tan, and several other humans and Rithians watched as he pointed to numbers that no one wanted to see. Even with our ship and the 5 additional vessels Earth is sending, we can only transport about 8% of the population before the star becomes critical, Han said. His voice was flat, like he was trying to hide his feelings. The room grew very quiet. 8% meant most Rithians would die. It meant choosing who would live and who would not. Elder Tan's crystalline face caught the light as he nodded slowly. Then it is as the Vortic and others concluded. The effort is not logically sustainable. The Elder's voice carried no anger, only sad acceptance. The Rithians had lived for thousands of years believing in balance and natural cycles. Perhaps this was simply their end. With respect, Elder, Jia said, stepping forward, we didn't travel all this way to accept defeat so easily. The humans in the room straightened their backs. Something in their captain's voice had changed. It wasn't just determination. It was the sound of someone who had found a new path. Diplomatic Officer Mun moved to stand beside Jia. He was older than most of the crew, with gray at his temples and eyes that had seen much of human history. Our history is filled with refugee crises, situations where the logical solution was to walk away, Mun said. We rarely did. Counselor Yun, who had worked most closely with the humans, tilted her head. What do you propose? Jia nodded to Engineer Quan, who brought up new images on the screen. They showed Rithian ships, small vessels that could reach orbit but not travel between stars. Your people have space-capable vessels, but limited range, Mun continued. We can modify them with our FTL principles, not elegant, but functional. Quan, a small woman with quick hands, pointed to specific parts of the Rithian ships. Your crystal technology is actually compatible with our drive systems. We can make them work together. But even with modified ships, there aren't enough, pointed out Counselor Ba. That's why we establish waypoints, Jia explained. Floating harbors in space where refugees can transfer to Earth vessels. On the screen, an animation showed small Rithian ships flying to large platforms in space. There, people would move to bigger Earth ships that would carry them to safety. Like a relay, Mun added, your ships don't need to make the full journey. They only need to reach the waypoints, then return for more people. The Rithians stared at the plans. For a moment, no one spoke. Your planet would accept millions of our kind. Elder Tan finally asked. His voice held disbelief. Jia hesitated before answering. Not without challenges, she admitted. But yes, we've already begun preparations. How? Asked Yun. Why would your people agree to this? Engineer Quan smiled slightly. The same reason we came in the first place. It's the right thing to do. We identified 3 regions on Earth with compatible environments, Mun explained. Construction of temporary cities began the day after we confirmed your message was real. The Rithians exchanged looks of wonder. Their entire understanding of advanced civilizations was being challenged. Unknown to both the humans and Rithians, high above the planet, invisible ships watched. The Vortic Coalition, the Navin Alliance, and other advanced species had positioned observation vessels in the system. They had come expecting to document another failed species, a sad but necessary data point in their understanding of cosmic evolution. Instead, they watched with growing interest as humans demonstrated something they had calculated out of their own societies eons ago: compassion without benefit. Inside the lead Vortic ship, observer Zell studied the transmissions from the planet's surface. Fascinating, she noted to her companion. They continue to defy probability models. Observer Mav nodded. Their plan cannot succeed. The modifications they propose would require resources they don't have. Yet they proceed as if success is possible. Inefficient, Mav said. They will exhaust themselves for strangers. Zell's many eyes blinked in sequence. Perhaps, but I find myself curious about the outcome. Back on Rithia, the work had already begun. Humans taught Rithians how to modify their ships. Rithians shared knowledge of their crystal technology. Both species worked day and night. We'll need to train pilots, Han said as he worked on navigation systems. Your ships are different from ours. I can fly one, offered a young Rithian named Sue. Many of us can learn quickly. In another part of the operations center, Dr. Bin studied Rithian biology. Your physical needs are different from ours, but not incompatible with Earth environments, she told Counselor Yun. You need more light, less gravity. We're designing the settlement areas to account for this. Elder Tan watched all this activity with mixed feelings. You make the impossible seem possible, he said to Captain Jia as they stood away from the others. But the numbers remain the same. Most of my people will die. Jia looked at the elder directly. Every person we save is a victory, Elder Tan. But I promise you, we're not aiming for 8%. We're aiming for everyone. How? Physics doesn't change because you wish it to. No, Jia agreed. But what's possible does change when you refuse to give up. That evening, a message arrived from Earth. The 5 promised ships had departed earlier than scheduled. More were being built. Nations that had never cooperated were now working together. Lieutenant Daney brought the message to Jia, her face bright with excitement. Captain, they found a way to convert cargo vessels to passenger carriers. 20 more ships will be ready in 3 months. As this news spread through the operations center, a feeling grew that neither humans nor Rithians could name. It wasn't quite hope. It was too new, too fragile for that. But it was a belief that perhaps, just maybe, the impossible wasn't. In their hidden ships, the watching civilizations added this new data to their calculations. The probability of success increased slightly. Not enough to be logical. Not enough to make sense. But enough to keep watching. The great evacuation of Rithia had been going for 3 months. Every day, ships left the blue-green planet carrying hundreds of Rithians to safety. In orbit, 17 Earth vessels waited to take them on a long journey to their new home. The Earth ships were not beautiful. They had been built or converted quickly, with function winning over form. But to the Rithians, they were the most wonderful sight in the universe. Captain Japark stood in the control center they had built in orbit. Through the large window, she could see the planet below. Its beauty still took her breath away, even as she knew its time was ending. The sun that had given life to Rithia for millions of years now showed angry red flares more often. Each flare was stronger than the last. Status report, Jia said to the room of busy workers. Lieutenant Han looked up from his station. We've evacuated just over 1 million Rithians so far. The third Earth fleet will arrive in 2 weeks with room for another 1 million. And the star. Engineer Kwan's face was serious as she pointed to a screen showing the sun. Activity is increasing. We have maybe 2 months before the major flares begin. Jia nodded. They were making progress, but not fast enough. Still, they worked on. Earth had surprised everyone, including its own people, by committing everything to this rescue. Schools were being built for Rithian children. Homes were being prepared. Medical researchers studied Rithian biology to make sure they would thrive on Earth. Captain called out a young Rithian named Sue who had joined the control team. The Sunrise just departed with 600 people. The hopeful will be ready for loading in 1 hour. Jia smiled at Sue. The young Rithian had learned human languages quickly and now served as a bridge between the two peoples. Thank you, Sue. Is your family on board yet? My parents will go on the Hopeful, Sue said. But I'm staying until the end to help. Before Jia could answer, her communicator made a sharp sound. Captain, we have a situation, reported Security Chief Da. His voice was tense. Multiple unidentified vessels just entered the system. Very advanced design. Jia rushed to the main screen. What she saw made her stomach drop. 7 ships had appeared near the edge of the system. They were like nothing she had ever seen. Sleek, perfect shapes that seemed to bend light around them. They moved with impossible grace, covering the distance to Rithia in minutes rather than hours. They're not answering our hails, Communications Officer Neri said, her fingers moving quickly over her panel. Wait, now, they're sending a signal. The screen changed to show a face. At least, Jia thought it was a face. It had eyes. Too many eyes, and a mouth that didn't move when it spoke. Its skin was gray and smooth like polished stone. That's a Vortic, whispered Elderton, who had entered the control room. They were one of the powers that refused to help us. I am Archon Vex of the Vortic Coalition, the being on the screen said. Its voice was flat and cold. Humans of Earth, you interfere in matters beyond your understanding. The natural extinction of species is a galactic constant. Your actions create dangerous precedent. Jia stepped forward where the camera could see her clearly. With respect, Archon, we're not interested in precedents, just saving lives. Your emotional reasoning is precisely why primitive species are typically quarantined until proper development, the Archon replied. We cannot permit. Cannot permit. Jia interrupted, feeling anger rise in her chest. These are living beings, not statistics in your algorithms. You do not comprehend galactic balance, the Archon continued. Species rise and fall according to natural laws. The Rithians' time has ended. Your interference disrupts patterns established over billions of years. On another screen, Jia could see the Vortic ships spreading out, surrounding the evacuation area. Behind them, more alien vessels appeared, different designs, but all showing the same advanced technology. We have reports from Earth, Neri said quietly to Jia. Similar ships have appeared in our system too. Counselor Yun stepped beside Jia. Archon Vex, we once respected the Vortic for your knowledge, but today I see that for all your advancement, you have forgotten something important. And what is that? The Archon asked. The value of a single life, Yun replied. The Archon's many eyes blinked in sequence. Sentimental thinking. Inefficient. The universe functions on Lazoff. A loud alarm cut through the conversation. Emergency, called Lieutenant Han. The Hopeful has suffered engine failure. They're spinning out of control with 600 Rithians on board. On the screen behind the Archon's face, they could see the small ship tumbling dangerously, blue energy sparking from its damaged engine. It was heading toward one of the Vortic vessels. Move your ship, Jia called to the Archon. They can't control their path. This is the consequence of using primitive technology, the Archon said, not moving. The logical solution is to let nature take its course. Jia slammed her hand on the emergency button. Launch Rescue Team 3. Within seconds, a small maintenance pod shot from the control station. Inside were 2 human engineers, Technician Jin and Technician Hoon. Their small craft raced toward the tumbling Rithian ship. What are they doing? The Archon asked, his tone showing genuine curiosity for the first time. Saving lives, Jia replied simply. Everyone watched as the tiny pod maneuvered alongside the much larger Rithian vessel. It was dangerous work. One wrong move could destroy both ships. The Hopeful's engine core is going critical, reported Han, his voice tight. If it explodes, it will take out the rescue pod too. Through the communication channel, they could hear Technician Jin's voice. Almost there. Hoon, prepare to connect the bypass circuit when I give the word. The pod matched the spin of the larger ship. Technician Hoon, in a spacesuit, left the pod connected by only a thin cable. He floated across to the Rithian ship, carrying repair equipment. They're risking their lives, observed the Archon. For strangers. Not strangers, Jia corrected. People. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then, connection established. came Hoon's triumphant voice. Engine stabilizing. The Hopeful slowly stopped its dangerous spin. Blue sparks still flew from its damaged engine, but it was under control. The people in the control room cheered. On the screen, Archinvex was silent for a long moment. His many eyes seemed to focus on something no one else could see. Perhaps, the Archon finally said, there are factors in our calculations we have overlooked. The other alien ships had moved closer. They too had witnessed the rescue. Your species is young, the Archon continued, primitive in many ways, yet you act in ways that defy our understanding. Is that good or bad? Jia asked. It is interesting, the Archon replied. We have observed your efforts here. You cannot succeed. The numbers are against you. We will succeed, Jia said firmly. Every Rithian will have a chance. Based on what evidence? Jia gestured to the screens showing the ongoing evacuation, the Earth ships arriving, the Rithians and humans working together. Based on what we've already done. When we started, everyone said saving even 8% was impossible. We've already moved over 12%, and we're just getting started. The Archon's ship moved, pulling back. The others followed suit. We will continue to observe, the Archon said. This is an anomaly worth studying. As the alien ships retreated to a watching position, Jia turned to Elder Tan. Were they going to stop us? She asked. The Elder's crystalline face caught the light. I think they were, but something changed their minds. Jia looked at the small rescue pod now guiding the Hopeful to safety. Sometimes the smallest actions make the biggest difference. The day the last Rithian left their home world, it rained. Not water rain, but a shower of light that fell from the sky in soft colors. Some said it was the dying star's way of saying goodbye. Others believed it was just another sign of the end. Either way, it was beautiful. Captain Jia Park stood on the bridge of the ESV Horizon, watching as the final transport ship rose from the surface. Her hair was streaked with gray now, though she was only 36 years old. The past year had changed her, changed them all. That's the last one, reported Navigator Han. His young face had grown thinner, harder. All Rithians are now off-planet. Jia nodded silently. They had done what everyone said was impossible. 8 billion Rithians had been evacuated from their dying world. The cost had been high. 27 human ships lost, 342 people dead. Earth had poured resources into the effort until some nations nearly collapsed. But they had succeeded. Send the message to Earth, she said quietly. Operation Mercy is complete. As the Horizon prepared to leave the Rithian system for the last time, Jia took one final look at the beautiful blue-green planet below. Soon, it would be gone, consumed by its own sun. But its people would live on. 6 months later, Jia walked through New Rithia, the largest of the Rithian settlements on Earth. Crystal towers rose among Earth's trees, catching the sunlight and breaking it into countless colors. Rithian children played alongside human children, teaching each other games from their worlds. It's more beautiful than I imagined, said Counselor Yun, walking beside her. The Rithian's blue skin had adapted well to Earth's sunlight, taking on a slightly deeper hue. Your people have built something wonderful here, Jia replied. They stopped at a small garden where Elder Tan sat on a bench, watching butterflies. The elder had aged rapidly during the evacuation, the stress taking its toll on his crystalline body. But his eyes still held the same wisdom. Captain Park, he greeted her. Come to check on your refugees. Jia smiled. Not refugees anymore, just neighbors. Tan nodded slowly. 8 billion neighbors. I still cannot believe you made room for us all. It wasn't easy, Jia admitted. There were protests at first. Fear. But when the first Rithian children arrived, something changed. Compassion overcame fear, Yun said, just as it did in space. The integration had not been perfect. Some humans still feared the newcomers. Some Rithians struggled to adapt to Earth's gravity and atmosphere. But for every problem, people on both sides worked to find solutions. Schools taught both Rithian and human history. Hospitals developed new treatments for both species. Farms grew food that both could eat. You've been summoned to New York, Tan said to Jia. The Galactic Council wants you to speak. Jia looked surprised. Me? Why not a world leader? Because you answered the call, the elder said simply. The Galactic Council chamber in New York had been built in just 3 months. It was a blend of styles from a dozen worlds, crystal walls like Rithia's, stone columns from Earth, and elements from other civilizations that had, until recently, avoided contact with primitive worlds. Jia stood before representatives from 18 different species. Some looked almost human. Others were so alien she could barely tell which part was their face. But all watched her with the same intense interest. The Rithian exodus changed us all, she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. For humans, it pushed us to achievements we thought impossible. For the Rithians, it meant survival. She paused, looking at the diverse gathering. But for the galaxy at large, it demonstrated something more profound, something many advanced civilizations have forgotten. A tall figure rose from the front row. It was Archon Vex of the Vortic Coalition, once their greatest critic, now a surprising ally. Captain Park speaks truth, the Archon said, his many eyes blinking in sequence. We had calculated compassion out of our societies long ago. We deemed it inefficient, a primitive evolutionary trait to be discarded as species advance. The Archon turned to face the other representatives. We were wrong, he said simply. Murmurs spread through the chamber. For a Vortic to admit error was unprecedented. Captain Park, the Archon continued, showed us that compassion is not merely an evolutionary artifact to be discarded. It is, perhaps, the most advanced technology of all. Technology? Asked a representative from a world called Naren. Yes, the Archon replied. It builds connections nothing else can. It solves problems pure logic cannot. We watched as humans achieved the mathematically impossible through this force we had dismissed. Jia had not expected this. The Vortic had been watching, yes, but their change of heart still surprised her. The Rithians brought gifts to humanity, she said. Their art has transformed our cities. Their medical knowledge has saved many lives. Their philosophy has given us new ways to think. She looked at Elder Tan, who sat among the Earth delegation. But perhaps Earth has given something to the galaxy as well, she continued. A reminder that mercy isn't weakness, that reaching out to the desperate isn't illogical, that the true measure of advancement isn't how much you know, but how much you care. After the council meeting, Jia found herself in a small garden overlooking the Hudson River. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that reminded her of Rithia. Captain Park, called a voice behind her. It was a young Rithian named Sue, who had worked with her during the evacuation. Just Jia now, she corrected with a smile. I've retired from space travel. Not for long, I think. Sue said. The council has approved the construction of a joint fleet. Ships crewed by both humans and Rithians, with technology from multiple worlds. What for? Exploration, mainly, but also, Sue hesitated, also to listen for other calls like ours, other worlds that might need help. Jia felt something warm in her chest, the same feeling she had felt when Earth first received the Rithian distress call. They want you to lead it, Sue added. That night, Jia stood on the balcony of her small apartment, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, other civilizations were rethinking their old ways. Species that had once calculated the worth of a life were learning to see beyond numbers. Worlds that had existed in isolation were reaching out to others. All because humans had done what came naturally to them. They answered a cry for help. A message chimed on her communication device. It was from a ship at the edge of the solar system, a Vortic science vessel preparing to leave. When we first encountered your species, the message read, "We thought you primitive for valuing emotion over logic. Now we understand that this is not primitive at all. It is perhaps the most advanced state of being." When the call for mercy echoed across the stars, only humans answered. And in doing so, you awakened something long dormant in the heart of the galaxy itself. Jia smiled as she read the last line. We are listening now to the end